families from going to hellfire is by seeking and acquiring the religious knowledge and then teaching it to one's family members. And that is how one is safe in the hereafter. And so this great and honorable scholar, Al-Hafiz Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah ta'ala, in implementing this verse, had acquired the religious knowledge to save himself, and then made the effort now to save his son from going to hellfire by hoping to pass on some of the religious knowledge that he had learned and some of the advice that he wanted to give to his son to implement that knowledge, which would be a safety for a person on the day of judgment. And so he was giving his son a series of reminders in what we mentioned in the previous session, telling him to think about the forbidden enjoyment that one might have gone through yesterday. Where is it now? It has departed and left behind regret. And where is the desire, the shahwa of the nafs, the self? It's gone. It's no longer here. Many times when people desire something unlawful and sinful, and then they get what they wanted, how long does that last? Meaning that desire, something unlawful, or it is to perform something unlawful with the opposite gender, how long does that desire actually last? Moments sometimes, and then it goes. And so the author is telling his son to reflect upon that. And if he who follows his nafs in what it wants and what it pulls a person to of the unlawful matters, he's saying how many heads has it brought upside down and how many feet has it caused to slip? And so he's making his son, or trying to get his son to reflect upon this so that he doesn't make the mistake of those of the past.
This meeting is being recorded.
And among what he said was, the one whose life ended well did not do so except by disagreeing with one's bad inclinations. Meaning you want safety in the hereafter, you want a good ending. Many times we ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us the good ending, what we call husnul khitam. How can a person do that themselves? Meaning what can a person do to enable themselves to get that ending in the hereafter? To go against the nafs, what their nafs is pulling them towards, the bad inclinations. If one goes against them, this would be a means for them to end upon a good state. While the one whose life ended badly did not do so except by one preferring the present life over the next life. And why is it that many people die on a bad state? Because they were pulled in by this dunya and preferred its enjoyments over working for the enjoyments of the hereafter. That many people among the Muslims in particularly, they know about the reality of the hereafter. They are Muslims after all. They know the day of judgment is real. They are Muslims. They know they are going to be held to account for the hereafter. They are Muslims. They know this. They believe in this. Yet why do they find themselves not working for it? Why do they find themselves still on a bad state while knowing the reality of the hereafter? The Prophet ﷺ gave the answer to that and mentioned there are two main reasons why people who know the reality of the hereafter do not work for it. And one of those reasons is the love of this life. People are not willing to give it up. They are not willing to sacrifice it. And so this is what the author is implying here. That why is it that many people end on a bad state? Because they ended up preferring this dunya over the hereafter. They were not willing to give it up. They were not willing to sacrifice its enjoyments and pleasures over the hereafter, and therefore they got what they wanted in this life, but they won't get what they might desire in the hereafter of the reward and the good ending. And so the author said, learn from the late kings and people of austerity, those who detach themselves from worldly luxuries. Where are the forbidden enjoyments of these people? Meaning, where are the forbidden enjoyments of those kings, those rulers, many of whom had desires available at the click of a finger? They might have been able to acquire unlawful things, alcohol, women, other than that, just by giving someone an order. Where is that enjoyment now? Gone. And where is the toil, the tiredness of the body that went into a person having to detach themselves from this life and the worldly luxuries? Both of them have come to an end. So what's left then? The author said, what remained are the plentiful reward and good mentioning for the righteous. That is, those who did good in this life. People remember them in their supplications. People remember them in sessions of religious knowledge. We recall the works of Ash-Shafi'i and Malik and Ahmad and Malik. May Allah raise their ranks. And as a result, don't these individuals come under the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he said, when a person dies, what remains of his continuous means of reward are three in general. And among what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, that a person will continue to get a reward for is the knowledge that they left behind that other people benefit from. So if you, for example, taught someone how to pray, and as a result of you teaching them, they pray, they get reward for that prayer, and you get a share of the reward for having taught them how to pray, and then they implement that knowledge. If you die, and that person who was praying now teaches somebody else who prays, you might have taught them when they were younger, for example, they prayed, they now have children. They teach their child how to pray. With what knowledge? The knowledge that you taught them. They get reward for it. And you being the one who taught them, even though you've died and you are in your grave buried, you will continue to get a share of that reward. So the likes of the four great imams and other scholars whose knowledge we continue to recall and benefit from, they get a share of that reward. Whose knowledge, meaning whose text, are we reviewing now and going through? The text of this honorable scholar, Al-Hafiz Abdul Rahman Ibnul Jawziyy, may Allah raise his rank. So if we pass on the knowledge that he taught, he gets a share. When we mention his name, we say, may Allah have mercy on him. May Allah raise his rank. He's getting reward. What enabled him to do that? He was righteous. He spent his life dedicated to teaching the religious knowledge and spreading it for the sake of Allah, and this is what he gets in return. Meanwhile, the ugly words and the weighty punishment remain for the sinners, those who disobeyed Allah, those who blasphemed. When we recall them and we say things like, look at that ugly blasphemer, look how ill he speaks against the religion, look how deviant he is, look how he spreads devious sayings about Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Allah damn him. This is what remains for those who are among the disobedient, blaspheming slaves of Allah. May Allah protect us from that. And so we ended here in the last session where the author said, it is as if the one who starved in this life never starved, and the one who was satiated was never satiated. And he meant by that as a type of lesson for one to reflect on, that whatever you might gain in this life, or whatever goodness or badness or ease or difficulty you went through in this life, eventually will come to an end. Eventually will stop and cease. And you will get then the return and the recompense for that in the hereafter, which will stay forever without an end. So be willing to go through that hunger in order to be successful in the hereafter. Even if you have to go through a challenging lifestyle, but a permissible one. And this will be a reason for you to forget that quote unquote miserable life, meaning one of challenge and difficulties in this life, because when you get to paradise and you see that reward, it's as if this hunger never happened in this life. It was temporary. You will forget about it in the hereafter. Meanwhile, he who slept with a full belly, which was acquired through unlawful means, once he goes to hellfire, then the mere dip of hellfire will be a reason for him to forget this dunya and all the luxuries that he acquired with it. So we'll continue on now, inshallah, from where we were. Is everyone caught up with regards to where we are in the text? A couple of people in the last session were struggling a little bit. So I can just ask then if everybody knows where we are in the text, and we can, inshallah, continue on from there. Okay, well, assume then you are on where we are in the text, inshallah. Are we okay to continue? Someone can just confirm for me.
Sheikh, are you going to show the text? Or Sister Kamara last week, she put the whole page on there because I didn't have the same book that you had.
So if somebody, if it's not Sister Qamar or somebody else, if you're willing to just take a screenshot, if you have it on your phone, for example, the current place that we are, if you don't mind sharing that in the group chat, so others can benefit from that, please. Instead of that, if you recall, I shared Heat to the Seed, the PDF, and there it has the text, just the English running down so that they can follow it that way. If someone's able to do that, just make it easier rather than you having to screenshot the next few pages.
This meeting is being recorded.
there should be an area called downloads. And if you're looking at the number of pages from the English, then it's page 6. Page 5, actually. Not got there yet. So 49 and 5. So if you can do me a favor, whoever's sharing the file, if you can just open it up. I don't have my phone with me, that's why I'm on my laptop. And if you're able to just take that page that we are on, screenshot that. There we go. I think someone's done that now. And that's what we're going to cover today in terms of the English, inshallah. So, inshallah, we'll continue then. Bismillah. The author, rahimahullah, said, وَالْكَسَلُ عَنِ الْفَضَائِلِ بِئْسَ الرَّفِيقِ. Did you manage to find it, Stadia, by the way?
Sheikh, I went to the files, but I downloaded the PDF, but it wasn't in the section on files. It didn't reach there, but it's on the chat. It's downloaded on the chat. Thank you, everyone who helped. But I don't see it in my file for when we finish class.
Okay, so how about if you've got it now, we'll go through the class and then I'll stay on the line so we can try and figure this out for you, inshallah, at the end.
Thank you, Barakallahu.
Ameen wa fikum. So the author, rahimahullah, said, وَالْكَسَلُ عَنِ الْفَضَائِلِ بِئْسَ الرَّفِيقِ. How bad a companion is laziness to seek merits. So the author is telling his son that laziness doesn't coincide, can't be in compliance with seeking the merits and seeking to do good deeds. Why? Because what is laziness? The scholars mention it is ضعف الهمة في الخير. It is a weakness of energy to do what is good, or having a weakness of energy to do what is good. Al-Imam al-Bukhari narrated that Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu said, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, that amongst the supplications that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to make was, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasali wal-jubni wal-haram wa a'udhu bika min fitnati al-mahya wal-mamat wa a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. So this is a supplication that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make. And included in this supplication is him seeking refuge in Allah, protection with Allah from what? Al-ajaz. Ajaz is an inability to do the good deeds. And al-kasal, which means laziness. Jubn refers to cowardice, and haram an old age which would render a person unable to do what is good. And also the Prophet ﷺ in this supplication sought protection with Allah from the torture of the grave. So even the Messenger of Allah ﷺ asked Allah for protection from cowardice and from laziness. Not because we believe that the Prophet ﷺ was lazy or was a coward, but look, the Prophet ﷺ is making this request from Allah, asking Allah to keep him away from it. Why? Because it's not a good thing. Laziness is not good. Cowardice is not good, especially when it comes to doing the good deeds, especially when it comes to standing up for the truth, especially when it comes to ordering others with what is obligatory and forbidding them from what is unlawful. It's not a good state. If you are a coward in that state, you want to be courageous. You want to be brave in calling to the truth. And so a person should then be aiming to stay away from laziness and cowardice so that they are able to do the good deeds. And our Shaykh, may Allah raise his rank, used to always advise people to not be lazy. Leave out laziness. Stop being lazy. Among what he used to say is, Al-kasalu yunafi tahsil al-ilm, which means that laziness does not enable a person to acquire the religious knowledge. He also said, تحصيل العلم لا يتفق مع الكسل, that acquiring the religious knowledge is not compatible with laziness, that they are two opposite things, because acquiring the religious knowledge requires energy, requires a person to be enthusiastic, to show alertness, attentiveness. To be lazy in that and in acquiring or putting the effort in to, as we said before, attend the sessions of religious knowledge, to be alert in the sessions of religious knowledge. Some people can't be bothered to attend at all because they are too lazy. And some people who turn up to those lessons have provided some energy but are too lazy to write, for example, too lazy to do something to acquire the religious, to capture the religious knowledge, typing, writing, for example. Then there are those who have the energy to do that, but they are too lazy after having captured the knowledge to go back to revise it. And those who do that sometimes are too lazy to keep up that repetition. This requires something of continuity, a continuous effort. I remember in my first year of acquiring, let's say, or my first year of university studies of the religious studies. And there was a general reminder given by our teachers that you're not just studying for the exams, you're not just revising to pass the exam, that this is religious knowledge, that this is, something that you are revising so that it stays in your heart, you are reviewing it so that you continue to benefit from it, and the tests are just a means and a reminder for that. And we get these reminders, but sometimes when you've got a test coming up, an exam coming up, there's an automatic push to revise. And what's on your mind, speaking for myself, let's say, many times is, I want to pass that exam. And I'm revising right now and making sure I revise it right now so that I can remember it in this exam that's coming up so I can pass it. While trying to remember that I'm not doing it just for the exam and it's rewardable to revise anyway, etc. And yet, like I said, I was speaking for myself, that when the end of year exams came, We revised, alhamdulillah, and we did the exams. And that particular year, alhamdulillah, I passed my exams. And, for some of the exams, not for all of them, I even had sleepless nights, all-nighters. So I thought, mashallah, I've done my bit. I've put that effort in. I was ready for the exams. And alhamdulillah, passed the exams and can have a breather now. I can rest. So I think it was the very next day of one of the exams. It was either Aqidah or Fiqh. While I'm relaxing, one of the brothers, I saw him revising. And I panicked. I saw him revising, meaning what we were memorizing. And he was continuing to look at that book and memorize from it and revise from it. And I panicked because I thought I missed an exam that he was getting ready for. I said, how are we finished? Do we have another exam? He said, we finished. I said, what are you doing then? He said, I'm continuing to revise so that the effort that I put into recall this religious knowledge, I don't forget it now. And I felt a bit bad, like, why was I not doing the same thing? But that's the whole point. Allah reward that brother and enable him to remain steadfast on what he learned. But that's what it's all about, that this is what we are talking about in terms of levels of energy. That I might have thought full of myself and look how much I did, and I stayed up all night and I passed the exam, and then I got lazy. That was a reminder for me. Whereas the brother, may Allah reward him, he continued and said, I'm not revising just for the exam. I've got the energy to continue. I don't want to forget, because inevitably, if I only revised for that exam, did the exam, then stopped, then I won't remember what I learned. And that is the reality many times, that you revise for something and then they forget it. You ask many people who tell you what was on the exams of their university degree examinations, many times they won't know because they revised for the exams and they forgot. When it comes to Islamic knowledge, it should not be like that, that we're only revising to pass a particular exam or for temporary goals, for example. This knowledge that we learn, we want to keep it in our hearts. That requires energy. So laziness negates that. We reflect on many people's excuses. Brother, I've got work to do. Who's going to pay the bills? Then, sometimes I've got overtime. I need to get the groceries. I need to come home. Need to eat as well, sometimes I have to go to the gym. And then I need to see brother so-and-so. I've got, my parents to go and see. Then I need to go and check in on my sister. And, they've got responsibilities, understandable. But they make it out like all of those responsibilities of theirs do not give them any time to acquire the religious knowledge or to teach it. These people, do you think they are busier or have more responsibilities than Salahuddin al-Ayyubi radiyallahu anhu had, who was fighting armies, taking care of the welfare of the Muslims at large for a period of time? Yet, despite all of the responsibilities he had, he used to memorize the Quran. He used to memorize the book called At-Tanbih in the Shafi'i fiqh. He used to attend sessions of religious knowledge, particularly hadith. And so, a person should look at then that how others are able to find the time in their busy schedules for the knowledge. So what excuse do we have then? And so, among what the scholars of Islam said, that among the reasons for a person finding themselves unable to do the good deeds for the sake of Allah and instead find themselves inclined towards worldly things is laziness. Laziness to do the acts of obedience, and having a lack of understanding sometimes of what it takes to be on the path of piety. Going to paradise is not easy. Otherwise, everyone will get there. And the higher levels of paradise are even more difficult. You to know what those paths are. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Huffatil jannatu bil makarih," that the path to paradise is filled with hardships, literally surrounded by difficulties. So if someone said to you, "I know it's a difficult path, I know it's going to be tough to get there, but what if I could tell you something to make it easier for you?" Wouldn't you jump at that? Well, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us a way. He said, "Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilman, sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "He who finds himself on a path of religious knowledge, then through that, Allah Ta'ala will make his path to paradise easier." Why are we not jumping on this then? It's like a cheat code, might be said, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us. That let me tell you something that will make it easier for you to go to paradise. Spend your time learning the religious knowledge. After that, how is a person going to be lazy? Why would they be lazy? If that's what is going to enable you to get to paradise easier. And so, among what our Shaykh rahimahullah said is that among what enables a person to leave out laziness is to constantly think about death. Remind yourself about death. Think about it a lot. The one who does so will hopefully then be pushed to leave out laziness. And what helps you to think about death more? Well, wouldn't visiting the dead help you to do that? Where are you going to find the dead? In the cemeteries and the graveyards. Shouldn't be the only time you visit the graveyard is when you die and your body is carried there. Going there is something good, if only to make dua for the previously deceased Muslims, but also for a reminder for yourself that I could be in there as well. I will be in there at some point. Just like they are in there before me, I will be in there after them. Among the supplications that one makes upon the entrance of the cemetery, after saying Assalamu alaikum ya ahl al-qubur, that peace be upon you, O inhabitants of the graves, one would say, Antum was-sabiqun wa nahnu bikum insha'Allahu lalahiqun. That you have preceded us to the graves, and by the will of Allah, we are going to join you soon. We're going to follow you. Isn't that a reminder enough that we are going to die? And if we're going to die, then you want to try and remember, what have I prepared for that time of death? And if I haven't prepared enough, then let me do something now about it and put some effort in before I am in a position where I'm not able to, which is when I die. And so the great companions, may Allah raise their ranks, used to go through many hardships. Hardships of traveling, hardships of detachment from worldly things, hardships of poverty, hunger, and thirst, all in order to what then? For the sake of this knowledge and spreading it. So whoever follows them in that will find success in that world. And so, among what our Shaykh also said is that all brothers and sisters, make it your goal to increase your desire to acquire religious knowledge and to teach it and spread it among the people. Make it your desire, meaning it should be a mindset of yours that you're thinking about this, you're wanting this in your heart. Then it will be apparent on your bodily organs. And he said, beware of laziness. For laziness is a reason for being prevented from many goodness, and it makes you miss out on your goals. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from laziness and give us the energy to do the good deeds. Thereafter, the author, rahimahullah, said, وَحُبُّ الرَّاحَةِ يُورِثُ مِنَ النَّدَمِ مَا يُرْبِي أي ما يزيد على كل لذة فانتبه وَتَعَبْ لِنَفْسِكَ. Which means loving relaxation ensues in regret that exceeds every desire. Take heed and toil for yourself. حُبُّ الرَّاحَ, loving relaxation, yurithu, ensues in regret that exceeds every desire. Why? Because loving this world and loving the relaxation within it makes a person leave out the acts of worship and become lazy to perform them. And this then results in a person having extreme regret after their death. Why didn't I perform those prayers when I could have? Why didn't I fast when I could have? Why did I not do this more when I could have? Why did I not do this and why did I not do that? And this regret is not felt now. It's not felt in this world. It's felt in the hereafter after one's death. At that point, it's too late, though, to do anything about it. And likewise, the pain that you find in your grave and in the hereafter for having been lazy to perform those acts of worship because you loved this world so much and were not willing to give it up is more than the enjoyments that you experience when you performed them in this world. And so, do not then put yourself in such a situation where you have that regret. So take heed. He said, "Fantabe." Take heed. That is, take heed of everything that I have just said, the author is saying, and prepare yourself. وَتَعَبْ لِنَفْسِكَ, toil for your nafs, meaning that make your body go through tiredness in order to obey Allah Ta'ala so that you can be amongst the winners on the Day of Judgment. And beware of working for and desiring relaxation in this world. This world is not a world of relaxation. It's not a life of relaxation. Rather, the relaxation that one would get is ultimately in the grave and then the hereafter. You're not going to find true relaxation or rest in this world, so don't go looking for it. Because if you find yourself too relaxed and too comfortable, and then end up getting too lazy as a result, this means you're not putting the effort in to do the good deeds. That's what it means. It's the opposite. You can't be lazy and be amongst the high-ranking Muslims in the hereafter. It's an oxymoron, the complete opposites. In order to acquire those lofty levels, you can't be lazy. So don't kid yourself into thinking that's a possibility or a potential reality. It's no way. Your laziness is going to kill off any chance of that. Therefore, be ready to put in the necessary effort so that you can be amongst the winners in the hereafter. وَاعْلَمْ, the author said, أَنَّ أَدَاءَ الْفَرَائِضِ واجتناب المحارم لازم. فمتى تعدى الإنسان فالنار النار. No, that performing the obligations and avoiding the prohibitions is lazim, imperative, something that must be done. Whenever man transgresses, that whenever any person transgresses that, meaning they don't fulfill the obligations and they do commit the sins, then they are being forewarned and threatened with what? Hellfire. Hellfire. That's what they will end up with. And so a person needs to recall that Allah Ta'ala has made certain things an obligation upon you and made certain things forbidden for you to do. And this is the very definition of piety, taqwa. Piety, which whoever dies upon that state will be safe from any punishment in the grave and in the hereafter. In other words, if you fulfill all your obligations and avoid those sins, then you'll be safe in the hereafter. You will not go through any punishment, not in your grave, not on the day of judgment, nor in hellfire. Because you obeyed Allah, you stayed away from the sins, you were pious. But the only way to be pious is to acquire the religious knowledge. Without knowledge, there is no way a person can reach piety. No, it's impossible. Actually impossible for a person to be a pious Muslim if they do not have religious knowledge. It's not through by mere dreams and desires and aspirations that a person has a high rank with Allah. If I was to ask, who among you guys wants to be a good Muslim? Who among you wants to be in paradise first? We'd all put our hands up and say, me, me, me. But that desire alone and aspiration alone won't do it. More is needed. More is required. And that more is acquiring that knowledge and applying it. And whenever a person does not apply that knowledge, they transgress. Then they will end up then tasting the fire. They will end up tasting the punishment of hellfire as a result of them committing the sins. So if a person transgresses the orders of the religion and they don't perform their obligations nor stay away from the sins, then such a person deserves the punishment of Allah in the hereafter. They deserve it. Deserve it, meaning that this is not injustice. This is not unfair. This is not ill treatment from Allah. They deserve this. And the threat of Allah Ta'ala is real. May Allah Ta'ala protect us all from that. Barakallahu feekum. We end there, inshallah. And it was a shorter session today. Barakallahu feekum. We end there and ask Allah Ta'ala to facilitate for us to continue next week, hopefully at the proper time. I'm still abroad, that's why I'm having some technical issues with timings and the like. Inshallah, next week we'll hopefully start not only properly, we'll hopefully have a slightly longer session just to catch up a little bit on what I plan to go through. Barakallahu feekum. So appreciate your patience, your continued patience with me. Barakallahu feekum, and inshallah we'll continue on together next week. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. Ameen. May Allah protect you all. Inshallah. See you all next week. Sister Hadi, if you stay on for a minute or two.